Om Hari Om. Om Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vidyadravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om. Thou art our loving mother. Thou art our compassionate father. Thou art our true friend and constant companion. Thou art our only wealth, and thou art our only wisdom. Thou art all in all. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. We have been considering the Lord's Prayer. Now, in the first place, we have to remember that this Lord's Prayer was given to his intimate disciples. Now, what is the difference between intimate disciples and other people? You see, these disciples were ready, were truly the spiritual aspirants. You see, you can talk about God to anybody, but that talk does not create any impression in the minds of everybody. Only those who are ready, they can understand, follow, and they can be benefited by those talks. So we find, Jesus is not talking to the multitude. He left the multitude behind. And a few disciples, those who are really spiritual aspirants, hungering for the truth of God, they went with Jesus to the mountain, and there Jesus began to teach them. And so to these intimate disciples that Jesus was teaching this Lord's Prayer. Now, what do I mean by becoming intimate disciples? Or in other words, what is it that makes one a spiritual aspirant? You see, the spiritual aspirant is he who understands first the purpose and goal of life. And that is to realize God, to achieve our union with Him, to be merged in the bliss of that union. That is the one and only purpose of life. This human birth, this human life has that one purpose. If you consider anything else, you will find that they all fall far short of that ideal. Enjoyments, pleasures. You see, the brutes in the field have such enjoyments and such pleasures that no human being can ever aspire to enjoy intensely the sense pleasures as they do enjoy. But what is it that makes a human life, human birth, worth it? The other day, I don't know if I quoted here or in Hollywood, you see, I get mixed up. The one psychiatrist or some psychiatrists asked questions to 900 people. They asked this question: is this human birth, human life worth living? What is it that you find in this human life? And 9 out of 10 people said, we don't see any worth at all. But it is worth living if we understand the speciality of human birth, and that is it, to realize God, to reach our union with Him, to be absorbed in the bliss of God, to seek, in the words of the Upanishads, to seek and know the eternal amongst the non-eternals of life, to realize the highest abiding joy in the midst of the fleeting pleasures of life. That is the only purpose of human life and living. And these disciples knew that, felt that. They had that urge. Their one urge was to know God, to be absorbed in the bliss of God. That was the one urge. And it is to them that Jesus already had given the teachings, the technique of how to unite ourselves with God through prayer and meditation. And then, when he teaches this Lord's Prayer, it is just like an aphorism to remind the disciples the steps to follow in their prayer and meditation. As well as we find here given the fundamental principles upon which we must base our whole life. Now he first, you see, I already explained to you, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Now this, to summarize what I have already explained to you, is this, that you have to feel a nearness to God. That relationship, intimate relationship, is to be established with God. God is our Father. He is everything. But approach Him not as if He is our Father, but approach Him who is our real Father. You know, if you consider this one truth, none is your own. Whom you call your own, your husband, your wife, your children, your father, your mother, none is your own. Except one, and that is God. He is your very own. You will never lose Him. Anybody else, you see, loses their attachment, and then death parts. But there is somebody, some being, who is really our own, and that is God. And so establish that relationship. He is your Father. He is everything. He is your friend. He is your constant companion. Establish that. Feel that. Then again, where to feel that presence? Where is God? Which art in heaven. Where is this heaven? You go to your scriptures and you will find what does Jesus teach. Neither shall they say, lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. You know, there's a beautiful truth taught by Swami Prabhavananda. He said, seek not God, but see Him. You see that Father which art in heaven, within the shrine of our own hearts. He's present. You see, without His presence, it's not possible to live and breathe for any being in the universe. And so there is that presence within each one of us, living presence of God. You know, at one time when Sri Ramakrishna was asked, where is God? And he just put a piece of cloth and said, look, God is here. You can't see Him because of this thin veil of a cloth. So He is right there. You see, I'm talking to you. You are listening. He is present. He is present. And without his presence, I will not be able to talk, nor you be able to listen. You couldn't breathe, you couldn't live without that presence. So which art in heaven? Then it says, hallowed be thy name. You see, what is the way to contact him? We have to have something definite, something very concrete in order that we can catch hold of. And what is it that we can catch hold of? The name of God. The name of God and God are not distinct, one and the same. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. You know, there's a beautiful story in Indian mythology. One time, they wanted to find out if there was any weight equal to the weight of Krishna, who was the incarnation of God. And so, while they went to balance, Krishna was on one side, and they put the whole universe, all the weight, on the other side. But still, Krishna was weightier. And then there was one devotee who wrote the name of Krishna and put it on the other side, and there was a perfect balance. So name and the name that indicates the being are one. And, you know, there is a practice in every religion of what we call, the Hindus call japam, or chanting the name of God. And you know, this, of course, one can philosophize about it and show how from word, which is identical with thought, this whole universe came out. But we don't need to go into that. But the real thing is that this is a matter of experiment. If you take the name of God and chant repeatedly, you begin to feel that that name of God is something that is alive, not mere words. Alive, conscious. And you feel the presence of God more intimately and intensely. It is also an experience of anyone who practices this, that the name is just like nectar. It has a sweetness, that you feel that sweetness. So that is what is meant by hallowed be thy name. You see, first the practice of japam. That's the only way you begin your spiritual life. Otherwise, it is very difficult to think of God, to conceive of Him. But the name is something that you can get hold of. And you can practice. And through that practice, through your experimentation, a development, an unfoldment comes in you. No argument, no philosophy can convince. But your own experiment, your own experience will give you that conviction. You know, my master often used to tell us when we would complain that we are not getting anywhere. It said, do first what we have asked you to do, and then come and complain. And there would be nothing to complain about the practicality of religion and how true it is that God can be known, can be felt, can be realized if we only practice certain simple spiritual disciplines. So hallowed be thy name. Then he says, thy kingdom come. You see, as you practice this, then you learn this secret. It is not a very mysterious secret. Perhaps everybody has some idea of it, but yet nobody feels it. You know it and you do not know it. And what is that? that thy kingdom come. There is the presence of God. There is the living presence of God. You see, the great seer philosopher Shankara pointed out how there are three disciplines or three things needed for that realization or union with God. One is faith, second is devotion, third is constant recollectedness. You see, of course, he says three, but really it comes to one discipline. And that is to have that constant recollectedness of God. That is devotion. If you ask me to define devotion, I'd say it is a constant recollectedness. Just as when you fall in love with somebody, what happens? In spite of yourself, the thought of that person is ever in your mind, in your consciousness. Now again, if you struggle to keep that consciousness, that thought in your consciousness, you will fall in love with God. And it is something that is permanent and eternal. You see, you fall in love with human beings, love stays, then they part, do part. It grows less in intensity in course of time. Let us face the facts. You may not agree with me, some of you perhaps, but reality is that. But if you fall in love with God, it becomes intenser and intenser and intenser. That's what brings ecstasy and samadhi and all that. That is the real thing. So, devotion and constant recollectedness really are the one and the same thing. And then you see, what is faith? Then actually you begin to feel that yes, God is. You know, after all, if you try to understand, you can convince yourself intellectually how God is within and how God is everywhere. You know, we all talk about how God is everywhere. God is all and God is within. But do we have that faith? That is the point. You see, it is just like this. You are present here. I see you. And as I see you, really I see God. Because your presence is not possible without the presence of God. This whole universe could not exist without the presence of God. I can convince myself. Yet when I go to think of God, oh, He's so far away. But when that faith comes, and that comes through hallowing the name of God and constant recollectedness of God, that faith becomes living. And then you see, thy kingdom come. You feel that. You feel the presence, living presence of God. You know, the Sri Ramakrishna used to say, those who pray, O Lord, come unto me, O Father, come unto me. They have not yet begun their spiritual life. But when they pray, Lord, you are there, reveal yourself to me. That is the beginning of spiritual life. And there's a prayer which any Hindu boy or girl prays in their ritualistic worship. Tad Vishnu paramang dhama sada pasyanti suraya. As with eyes wide open, a man sees the sky above him, so the seer sees God continually, the all-pervading Spirit. See, thy kingdom come. I may not see it, but it is possible to see him. Let me see him. Let me commune with him. He knows my heart. You see, just as you stand in the open air and On a clear day, you look above and you see the sky clearly with your eyes open. Similarly, when that divine sight opens in us, we see clearly. And there have been others. There have been seers in the past. There are seers living in the present who live continually in that vision of God, in that consciousness of God. So that is the prayer. Oh, not like this, oh Lord, let me be good, and then when I die, I will go to heaven and I'll live in your company. No, no, no. You have to see him this moment. Have that firm faith that this will open up. And try to feel thy kingdom come. He's here. You know, there is another method of meditation which explains this. And in that method of meditation, the principle is this, that we have to forget the creation for the time being, this whole universe. You see, what is it that distracts us? The names and forms. Take away the names and forms, what remains? Reality, God. Why is it that I am not conscious of God? Because I think of my body, I think of my mind, I think of my thoughts, I think of my senses. I think of names and forms outside. That's what prevents my seeing God. And so it is this universe of name and form that is creating that block in my consciousness. Instead of seeing God, I see this universe of name and form. And so the principle in this meditation, try to, not forget. Because it is difficult to forget. It is easy to say forget. But here is the process given. Think of the elements that make up this universe are dissolving into subtler and subtler elements, and then dissolving into the mind, then into the intellect, then into the ego, then into the final cause, the Prakriti, out of which this whole universe has come out. Let everything be dissolved there. And that again becomes dissolved in Brahman. Your body, the elements that make up your body, they are dissolved in your mind. Your mind is dissolved in your ego, and then in the Prakriti, the primal cause, and then in Brahman. Try to think that. And then what remains? Brahman. God and God alone. And so meditate upon that. Then you feel that thy kingdom come. Then again, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. See, these are different steps in the process of meditation. You hallow thy name, hallowing thy name, you come to that understanding. You feel that presence. There is Brahman or God, and God alone is. This is a process in your meditation. Then again, you see, from him has come out the whole universe. You see, we forget that all this, anything has come out of him. He is the substance, the reality that make up this universe. And so again, feel that from him has come your mind, your senses, your intellect, your ego, your body, and this whole universe. You see, Christ or Krishna is not only your Atman, your true self, but he is your mind, he is your ego, he is your intellect, he is your senses, he is your body. It's a feeling, try to meditate that way. Then is it that you feel thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. You see, then earth and heaven have become united. You see, earth and heaven have become united. And you become an instrument in the hands of the divine. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. But of course, actually, you see, this is, after all, what is a man? As he thinks. As he thinks, so he becomes. And what is meditation? It is the thinking process, the process of dehypnotizing ourselves. You see, we are hypnotized. Hypnotized into the belief that I am body or mind or senses, and this universe is so real as I see it. This is hypnotic spell. The reality is God, Brahman, nothing else. And how did we get ourselves hypnotized? By thinking process. And so again, we have to change our way of thinking. See, that's what St. Paul referred to when he said, be transformed by the renewal of your own mind. How is this process of renewal happens? By thinking. So think of God. Sleep with Him, dream of Him, walk with Him, eat with Him. You see, that is the process. Now, of course, again, the really one who has realized God, who is no longer dreaming, but has realized God, he alone can do the will of God. You see, those of you who have read the life of my master, the eternal companion, in which I wrote the life of my master, you will find in the very beginning, I have been questioning my master. You see, I was like a doubting Thomas. When he said he does the will of God, there was on one occasion, and he said, do you think I do anything by my own will? As I know, as I get the will of God, as I receive His command, I do everything. I do not move without His will. Then I asked him, but does it mean that as I also can feel what I do is the will of God? He said, no. Then I said, do you see Him? Do you talk to Him? He said, yes. You see, that, of course, is a state of attainment. But in our present state of ignorance, that will can be fulfilled in us or through us if we can curb our ego, our selfishness. You see, you be the instrument of God. You do the will of God in your ignorance. And how? By curbing, by subduing your selfish desires and selfish cravings. Then you see, the will of God becomes reflected upon you. Give us this day our daily bread. What is this daily bread? What is bread? It's the grace of God. Bread is the bread of grace. And it says, give us this day our daily bread. You know, my master used to tell us that there is the grace of God upon everybody. Pray that that grace may be revealed to you. You know, there is another truth, that God loves us, every one of us, so dearly. And His love is so intense that He does not let us know that He loves us. And that's the Maya. So His grace is upon every one of us. His love and grace. Pray that we may feel that love, we may feel that grace. Now again, you see, the most important point here is, give us this day our daily bread. You see, as you go to pray and meditate, and you feel that there is the presence of God, then you ask of Him for His grace, that moment. Not tomorrow, not day after tomorrow, not after you die. But this moment may you be revealed to me through thy grace. You know, as a little boy, I remember I read a story which impressed me very much, and I often tell that story. It's about a little girl. When she was young, she learned that God has incarnated as Rama. You know, those of you who have read the Ramayana, the story of Rama, will appreciate it. But it's said that Rama, God incarnated as Rama, and that Rama will one day pass by her cottage, by her door. And she believed in it firmly. And she would come out every day as a young girl and watch for Rama to pass by. And a leaf would fall, or any sound of footstep, or any kind of sound, should be eagerly looking. Ah, there comes Rama. She grew into a young lady, and she kept up that watch. And every moment, with every sound and noise, she would feel Rama is coming. She was not disappointed. She's still hoping, expecting. Then she grew to be an old woman. And she continued her watch. And then Rama passed by. And her life became blessed. So that is a very impressive story, at least to me it has been, that we must feel that this moment the revelation may come. And again, ready to wait patiently. Don't you remember what Christ had taught? Watch and pray, for the kingdom of God is at hand. And that grace, the moment that grace comes, it opens up. And you have the vision of God. And you are in that bliss, which is eternal, which is abiding. Now, of course, there is always this idea in everybody's head that, well, I'm so impure, I'm so unworthy. And always, every spiritual aspirant has to pass through this idea that, well, I'm not ready yet. I will have to practice so much meditation for so many years. I have to do so many japam and prayer. And then eventually I will find Him. As if we can buy God by any method or means. No. And as if we can be worthy of Him any time. As if we can be pure enough any time to find God. No. When His grace descends, all your karmas, all your impurities are burnt like a heap of cotton. Yes, we must have humility. Humility in this sense, not I, with my strength and power, that I can find God. But through His grace, if He chooses, then that grace may descend any time and I will have the revelation. And so that is the real thing. And so give us this day, this moment, our daily bread. Now again, of course, the question arises, if everything depends upon grace, then where is room for self-effort? You see, self-effort is that. Watch and pray, for the kingdom of God is at hand. That is the self-effort. Sit down or kneel and feel the presence of God and ask for that revelation. So that is the self-effort. If you don't want it, then, as I said, that grace is upon everybody. But you have to want it, want that feeling, want to feel that. But if you don't want, then God is patient also. Well, let him play. You know, there's a saying of Sri Ramakrishna. Mother gives many kinds of playthings to the children. And then mother gets busy in cooking or doing things. And then if any of the children becomes restless for mother, he throws away the playthings and cries for mother. And mother, whatever she may be doing, she would run after the child. It is the same way. God is like our mother, like our own father. He is loving us. He is taking care of us. But we want playthings. We want dolls. And so we forget. And also, God says, all right, let him keep quiet and be restless with his playthings. But when we are tired of those dolls and playthings and we cry for mother, he comes running to us. So that is the self-effort. You know, my master told me at one time, there is the grace of Guru, there is the grace of God, there is the grace of his devotees, but without the grace of one can be ruined. What is that grace of one? That is the grace of your own mind. And that is very important, to have the grace of your own mind. You know how many times don't you have how you feel, well, I don't feel like getting up to meditate today. I feel so lazy, and you go on and put on your blanket again and go to snore. You see? And so you don't have the grace of your mind, no, not that willpower. So that is important. To have that will. Yes, you become restless as you go to meditate, distractions are there. But make up your will. Will to do it in spite of the distractions and restlessness of your mind. And you succeed. So that is important. And forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Now, a spiritual aspirant, you see, first let me point out that debt is the debt of karma. Now, a spiritual aspirant is supposed to forgive his debtors first. You know, in our social behavior, as we live together, we act and react. We are affected by the actions and thoughts of others, and we affect others by our actions and thoughts. And so there are debtors. Or somebody hurts you. He becomes a debtor. What should you do? Take revenge? No. Forgive your debtor. Then there are imaginary debtors. What I mean is this. Always the human tendency is to put the blame upon the other fellow for everything, for anything and everything. See how, take for instance, Adam. I mean the original Adam, the original man. What did he do? He put the blame upon poor Eve. And what did Eve do? He put the blame upon the serpent. And if the serpent could have talked, it would have put the blame upon somebody else. So you find that it is the human nature, human tendency for anything to put the blame upon another. I remember one Swami, when he was a brahmachari. He went to wash some dishes in the Ganges, and then as he was carrying the dishes, he was a little careless, and the dishes fell to the ground and they all broke. And you know how he put it? The dishes fell down. You see, that is the human nature, human tendency. We never put the blame upon ourselves. Now, we have to forgive our debtors, imaginary or real. You know why? It is for your own good. If you have any ill feeling against anybody, and then go try to pray and meditate, you will find that ill feeling towards that fellow is becoming intenser and stronger in you. Instead of thinking of God, you are thinking of your enemy. You see, the thought of enemy, remember that, is very stronger. Thought of hatred is stronger even than thought of love. And so you have to be very careful. And what happens? It is a cancer in your heart, hatred or ill will. And it hinders you. It's a great obstacle in your path. So have no ill feeling towards any creature. For your own safety, for your own good. It will only harm you. So pray for everybody. And pray for your worst enemy. Send a thought of love towards your worst enemy. It's the love that conquers. So that is a fundamental thing for any spiritual aspirant. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. You see, it is taken for granted that you forgive your debtors. Then you pray to the Lord, forgive us our debts. Now, what does it mean? This praying to God to forgive us our debts. You see, as it is, we are within the wheel of karma. What is this karma? You see, action and thought. Whatever we do or think brings two kinds of effects in our life. One is that it creates an impression in the mind. And the sum total of such impressions form our character. And we repeat the same things we cannot help. We are controlled by those impressions of the mind. What modern psychologists say, the subconscious mind controls our conscious mind. We are helpless. Then again, our actions and thoughts bring another kind of effect in our life, either happiness or misery, according to the nature of our action and thought. You see, for instance, if I have a thought of hatred, it creates an impression of hate in my mind, and also it brings suffering as a result. Same way, if I think of love, love creates an impression in my mind, and I become loving, more loving, and as a result, I find happiness. Now again, as we remain within this wheel of karma, there is no freedom. However good actions you may be doing, You are creating impressions and you are within the wheel of karma. And nobody can do actions good, absolute good all the time. Good and evil actions. It's a mixture of good and evil. And that is why in our life it's a mixture of happiness and misery. So within this relative plane, that is, as long as we live within this law of karma, we cannot find freedom. We cannot find God. And so the prayer is so that we can be free from this debt of karma. There's a beautiful passage in the Shvetashvatara Upanishads. This vast universe is a wheel. Upon it are all creatures that are subject to birth, death, and rebirth. Round and round it turns and never stops. It is the wheel of Brahman. As long as the individual self thinks that it is separate from Brahman, it revolves upon the wheel in bondage to the laws of birth, death, and rebirth. But when through the grace of Brahman it realizes its identity with him, it revolves upon the wheel no longer. It achieves immortality. You see, we achieve immortality, we attain our union with God only when we come out of this wheel. So that what does it mean exactly? What is meant by coming out of this wheel of karma? And so that God forgives us our debts. It is the knowledge of God, knowledge of Brahman, which is like a blazing fire that burns all our karmas. And so this is a prayer, forgive us our debts, that is, burn all my karmas by revealing yourself to me. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. I'll not have time to explain that. In my next, I shall again take up those points and also give a summary of the whole thing. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mritor Ma Amritangamaya Abir Maidhi Rudrajatte Dakshinang Mukhang Tatte Namang Pahi Nityam. Om. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from death to immortality. Lead us from darkness to light. Light us through and through, and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace,